So that's where I bedded down for a little bit, got up, started booting the dogs, got the dogs ready, and then once we were ready, we ended up taking off. Or no, I take it back. As soon as we got ready to take off, we were just about to go, and then all of a sudden I heard the dogs barking and going crazy, and that's because another team was just about to pass us. So since we weren't ready, like 100% ready, I let them go by, and then let them get a little bit of distance before we took off. And then shortly after that, we actually end up passing them, which is pretty cool. It's always fun actually passing teams. Last year we didn't do a whole lot of passing, so that was pretty cool. And then shortly after that, we actually passed another team. And like I said, so I thought I was like in third, fourth, or fifth. So that was pretty motivating going forward. And then pretty uneventful after that. Trail's pretty smooth. We start kind of going up in elevation gradually as we're getting closer and closer to Rosebud, or I guess kind of starting on the base, so to speak. So then it's just kind of uphill. And then new Rosebud was coming. Kind of do this, and then you go back down, and then go back up, and then go back down. And then finally, you get this nice steep up. And the trail gets real narrow, and there's just basically one sled path going up. And then it got really steep, and that's where I thought we were going to excel quite a bit, because these dogs, we've been doing a lot of training up and down the hills in the terrain that we're at right here. So they were powering it. Like I said, the trail itself wasn't that packed in, so it was pretty loose, especially being that close to the front. There wasn't a lot of teams that had gone through it yet. So the dogs were kind of doing everything they could to grip up there. And then so was I. Like I said, there was really only, it wasn't that wide of a trail, so if you stepped off, you're kind of in the loose snow. So trying to actually find footing to help push and kick with the sled. And there was a few times we came to a stop as the dogs are kind of looking back, like, what's the deal? Why are we stopping? Like, we're going up a hill, just because that's how going up hills are. And then, so I'd have to get off and actually physically push the sled to get it going again. Once it's going, I mean, the dogs take off. And then, so I was running alongside the sled up the steep hill, and as it just kept on getting steeper and steeper and steeper. And I knew we were doing really good, and I knew other teams weren't going to be able to go as hard and as fast as we were up that hill. So I was giving it everything I had. And I'm literally running alongside, pushing this sled up this steep hill. I'm starting to get drenched, absolutely drenched in sweat. And like I said, I just didn't want to slow down, though, because I knew this is what we were really trained for, were these steep hills. So I tried to get everything I had. My heart was just beating out of my chest and already starting to get sleep deprived because I didn't sleep at all. We ended up resting 4.5 hours on trail. So now it's like 1, 2, 3 in the morning. I don't even know what time it was going up there, but pretty early in the morning. And there was a few times where I actually had to go through the back of the sled and push down on my handlebars that are on my cooler to actually get better traction. And then to get the sled moving. And once it's going, I got to sprint to not let the sled go, because now there's less resistance and the dogs kind of take off. And I'm completely winded at this point. So there was a couple times when the dogs almost just took off and I wasn't able to catch the sled. And that would have been horrible going up Rosebud, because I would have had to run up the entire way. And then that was kind of like the big steep point. And then you finally kind of level off. And doing this the year prior, I knew that this wasn't the peak, the summit, so to speak. There's one kind of final push that is a real issue, and was for our team this year. And so got on the sled once we kind of leveled out there, and was trying to catch my breath because it's quite a push getting up there. I don't know how many feet we go up, but it's almost like 4,000 feet, pretty much straight up, it feels like. And then you get to like this false summit where you catch your breath a little bit. It takes a hard left, and then you see the summit right there. And at this point is kind of pretty wind-blown trail. There isn't really a distinct trail. You could see where the other teams went. There was actually kind of two. two crossings that some of the teams went. You could see the markers, but at this time it's real rocky. There's not a whole lot of snow, honestly, not a very distinct trail. And then, so the dogs, as we make that left, kind of start going up, and then here we were struggling. The sled was coming to stops multiple times because I couldn't get traction, the dogs couldn't get traction, and I just remember the sled coming to a stop, and like half the dogs just pulling and doing everything, and every time you're ready, all right, and then you give the sled a jerk, and if you don't, in those situations, if you don't move the sled, the dogs aren't going to do it. So you got to give that initial push usually. And I was just not able to get the traction needed to do that. So then the longer we're stopped there, anytime you're stopped, the dogs try to figure out, all right, why are we stopped? And if you're not going forward, they're going to start to think, all right, well, maybe we're supposed to go right. And then they'll kind of look at you and they'll take a couple steps. And then so they started doing that. I'm like, ha, 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 ha. And they're kind of looking at me. So then we had the same issue happen on us last year going up Eagle Summit, where complete whiteout conditions, there's no trail. I could see the markers, but the dogs couldn't, head-on wind. And we started going straight, and then the dogs didn't want that wind. There's no distinct trail, so they started turning left, and then just beelined it backwards. So I didn't want that to occur, so as soon as they started even fainting like they were going to go off into a different direction, because, I mean, it's just straight downhill that way, and then just straight downhill that way, basically. So I didn't want them to go down any other way or go back the way we came, because it was a physical exertion coming up there. And those two teams that I passed, I was pretty confident that we got up that section of hill back there faster than most, if not, well, I'll say most. I'm sure a couple teams for sure. One for sure went up faster everywhere, but I feel like we did a really good job on that and didn't want to lose what we gained or maintained on these other teams at least. So as soon as they started doing that kind of stuff, I ran up there and it was hauling them, and like they were kind of figuring out and got up front and kind of led them right away, got them back on the trail, and then it got more steeper after that, and I'm just like not losing traction. I'm literally like on my hands and knees just giving it everything I had, and then you get it to the point where the sled would finally jerk and would go like 6 inches, and then it'd come to a stop because there's just no traction. You're just fumbling on rocks, and you can see the summit. I mean, it's right there, and you just feel like, you know, like we just go for like 10 feet, we're there. And it was just like that. What felt like forever. We were probably there, I don't know, but it felt like forever. We're probably there, and we were between 10, 20 minutes at the absolute most. That's probably an over-exaggeration. And during that time, there was 2 more times where I'd go to the front of the team, and then so you had to run up that steep incline to get to the front of the team, so that just made me more exhausted. I literally, going up that hill, that initial hill coming up, like I said, gave it everything I had. I was drenched in sweat. I mean, I felt like I was going to pass out a couple times because I just gave it everything I had, because, like I said, I knew that that's where we would shine. And then just to kind of stumble on this last summit really was a little upsetting, but it's just because of the sled design, not having the trash can in the back again, actually have a stable handlebar in the back to push, because my handlebar up front, it's a single stanchion, it has too much give on it. So things that we're going to work on going forward, basically. But finally got that sled to get some traction after a lot of stop and go, giving it everything I got, gaining 6 inches, just doing that repetitively. We finally got up there, and I was just thankful that the dogs didn't turn around completely. There was a couple times where it felt like we were, and we're just inching our way up there, and then we'd come to a stop, and you'd be sitting there what feels like for 5 minutes, and the dogs, they don't want to do that. Like I said, they try to problem solve instantly if there's an issue, and so they don't like that hesitation. They don't like being stopped. they try to problem solve, and I just didn't want them to completely beeline it, turn it around, because if that happens, I'm not even confident I'll be able to set a hook there or be able to stop the team at all. And we would be going all the way back down Rosebud and having to do that all over again, where I'm more exhausted having to do it twice, and then it just kind of snowballs after that. So, but through trial and error, we got to that summit, and finally got to the summit, and then I stopped and attempted to snack the team, basically to just give myself a rest. I kind of knew the dogs wouldn't really want to eat right after that, but just snacked them, slammed, I don't know, like a half a gallon of that water trying to catch my breath, and then unzipped everything, or everything I had was already unzipped. So I just kind of let that air out, let that steam go out. It was still, I don't know, negative 20 or so up there. And then you're kind of, once you're on the summit, you kind of go on this nice little saddle, and then you come back up, and then you go down, basically. And once we went down, it's a pretty nice, smooth drop down. I don't remember it being too technical or challenging, like coming down Eagle. Once we got down, it got cold, because now you're going downhill. Even once we leveled out, it just dropped because I'm no longer working, and now I'm drenched in sweat, so I'm just soaked. And then it was cold, and I didn't remember the run after Rosebud last year being so long and monotonous. And then, so I started getting pretty tired after that. And then you just kind of settle it in. Like, for some reason, I was thinking 101 was just like right after Rosebud, and it's not. I don't know how many miles it is. Maybe we can put that in if we figure out in a caption or something to this, but it just felt like forever. And then you would just go, you'd see a marker on a long straightaway, and then there'd be like a turn where you dip down, like go over a little overflow, come up, and then just be a long runway where you see a marker at the end, and you just turn, go down, come up, and it just felt like it was like that over and over and over. And it just felt like it was never going to end after really a long day to start this race, and I was just waiting for it to end. And I kept on telling the dogs, like, we're almost there, guys. Like, I hope. Like it just felt like it was never ending. And monotonous, and just the same thing, just over and over and over. But, you know, if you're going forward, you're getting closer. And at one point, I thought we were literally going in circles, because it was just literally the same thing over and over. And not like Birch Creek where it feels like the same, but you can tell there's differences. Like, it was the same thing, just over and over. And then finally, what felt like hours, it was definitely hours after coming down Rosebud, we got to the point where I could see the road, and I could see a trailer, and I knew exactly where we were. I knew it was right outside of the checkpoint for 101, so I knew we were close, so I started getting really excited, and then kind of zone in, trying to get the dogs pumped. And then there was one section where we come up on the sheer ice, and sheer ice, there's no snow on it whatsoever. It's just a solid ice sheet. And this is where there's kind of like a little stream, or I don't even know what it was, or creek or something that we're kind of riding on. And I could see the marker, and it was distinctly on the left-hand side. And for whatever reason, the dogs went right on the sheer ice. So I'm fully on the brake, ha, 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 ha. Nothing. We just went straight forward. And sheer ice, fully on the brake, not even slowing down. So I've been in circumstances before where the only way to stop the team is to tip your sled, and then the resistance of the entire sled and yourself dragging stops them. So I decided to do that there on the sheer ice. So did that and didn't even slow them down at all. So now I'm just dragging. And my biggest concern is that we were going down a trail that was initially the right trail, and due to decaying trail conditions, i.e. overflow and water, they rerouted it to the left-hand point. So that was my biggest fear and concern, is that we were going into water. And now that I'm tipping on my sled, getting dragged on my side, just was anticipating just getting sunk into water, and didn't want that to happen. Luckily, it didn't right there, so we finally hit some snow again. The sled caught, tipped it upright, set the hook, went up to the front of the team, kind of assessed the situation. There was a big kind of berm in between us and where I anticipated the trail to be, so I didn't want to cut through that. So I actually turned the team around, set the hook on my sled on the right side so you can loop it around. Then you get out front, kind of get the lead dogs, get in between them and the rest of the team. It's a whole process to turn a dog team around. We got forward, we got left and right. We don't have reverse, so changing the team around is not easy. Was able to do that, but like I said, I was just able to tip my sled back up. So now that trash can tipped over. And now after I camped and got rid of the straw, actually used the straw to bed the dogs down, I had the trash can on top and just had like everything I wanted to leave at 101 in there, like all my trash and all that stuff sitting on top of the sled, strapped in still. So as it got tipped, that kind of all went over. And then I turned the team around, it hooked. So the team's this way and the sled's still facing this way. And you got to be real careful, because with the sled facing that way and the gang line being bent, you got enough resistance to hold the team. But as soon as you kind of grab that front of the sled and get it to a point where there's less resistance, the dogs just go. And so that's exactly what happened. The dog just went as my trash can's still sitting there. So I grabbed it like one hand, and now we're back on the sheer ice. So I'm holding it with one hand. Oh, excuse me. Fully on the brake, trying to G them. So if they would have just went G a little bit towards the right trail, I could have basically turned around the right way. But they didn't do that. So this time we went back, going back down the same trail we were just going until we passed that sheer ice for a little bit and we're back on the hard trail. I went like another 20 feet so I could actually turn the team around, have control of them on the hard snow, and get them to potentially haul and go during the right trail. So stopped them, swung around again, and this time stopped them again. And this time they got tangled up pretty bad, so untangled them, got the sled turned around, and then stopped the team right there. Stopped the team there, and then went up front. Or no, I didn't even go up front. So I stopped the team there, lined everybody out, untangled everybody, and then just slowly crept to that point. Now I got full control because we're still in the snow. And I'm just ha, 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 ha. And they're still just G, 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 G. Like distinctly going this way. So now I stopped the team completely, went out front, and started walking out front of the team. And I've never, ever, ever, when I've gotten out front to lead the team, had these guys not follow me. Never. So you do that periodically. If they go down the wrong way in a turn, you'll stop, set the snow hook. As soon as you even start walking the one way, okay, we're going that way, Dad. So this time, got out front and started walking that way, and it's sheer ice. So I'm just like sliding up there and look back and see the team over there going G without me or anybody. So I instantly start beelining it, running on sheer ice, and dive for the sled. And if this is like my sled, like I hit it and just missed it and just came down on the ground as I'm seeing the team just take off. Yeah, so these are the overboots we have, or I have, I should say. These are the Neos I have, and they have these little metal spikes, spike-ish type deals to give you somewhat traction on the ice, but it's still sheer ice. The coefficient of friction is non-existent on ice. On sheer ice especially. So this is what I was running in and dove for the sled. Just missed it. And then as I'm on the ground, I see the team just take off. So I get up and start running. And they're going down again that same trail, and there's open water that way. I'm just... Now, when you're on a sled on ice, and you're riding on a sled on ice with a team of dogs, it's a little bit different than you yourself walking on that ice. It feels a lot more secure. Your body weight and the weight of the entire sled is spread out on two long runners, so you're not compromising that ice as much as just a bipedal human creature walking on that ice itself. So it felt a little more sketchy. And then they disappeared, and I'm already drenched in sweat, still wet. So now I just kind of, all the stuff's just going through my head. Like, I can't believe I just lost the team, like, in a race. Like, my race is over. Like, I'm done. That's like what I'm feeling at this point. And every one of the sleds, there's a tracker, and on the tracker it's got an SOS and a help button. And if I would have that on me, I would have hit that and just been done, so I could just go make sure my dogs were okay. Because again, that's the concerns, is that they're going to run into open water, and then the sled's going to go down, and it's just going to, like, all the stuff's just going through your head. So like I said, if I would have had that button, I would have hit it instantly right then and there. Thankfully, it was on the sled, so that I didn't. Hopefully never have to. So I just walked the way they went. Shortly after they disappeared, they dropped a ski pole for me. So I picked that up, and that made me feel a little bit better, so I could actually pick and prod around on the ice and make sure it was somewhat secure before walking in it. And there was a couple sections that, I mean, I just went through. It was more slushy, wet than straight water overflow. But walked for a while and was calling them, didn't hear nothing, didn't see nothing. And then they went past where we went last time, continued on, and got to a point where it was just no trail whatsoever on loose snow. And they got into that, the sled caught, and they felt resistance and stopped basically. So I was able to catch up with them and assessed everything. I had like so much gear just packed on top of the sled. I had, like I said, the trash can. I had my beaver mitts just sitting on top of the sled because I'm drenched in sweat from everything that had to go from just turning the teams around and going out front of the team. I mean, that's a pretty physical exertion with all the clothes that we have on, so you get sweating pretty quick. So I had those just sitting on the sled, and they were still there. So somehow I didn't lose anything, is basically what I'm trying to say. And then at this point, went out front, turned the team around again, and then hopped on the sled and went back to the same point we were at again. And like I said, the road, the Steese Highway is right there. You can see the guardrails, and like I was almost contemplating actually going up this berm and taking the road. But I felt like they weren't listening to me, and there was no guarantee that they would go where I wanted to on the road, and felt like that was a more dangerous option. But if we couldn't get it the next time, that's what I was going to do, because it was right there. And so at this point, went past that point again, turned the team around again, untangled everybody again, and just took Rambo out of lead, so I just had Y in single lead, and grabbed an extra tug, hooked it around her harness, and just grabbed that, wrapped her around my hand, put her on my left side so that she couldn't pull right, and we just slid across that ice, and the entire team, I mean, is running across and around me, especially Rambo. He thought he was still in lead 4 positions back, so he's getting up here, doing everything he can to get entangled, and it was a mess. But just skid like that all the way across until we finally got on the right trail, let them loose, untangled everybody again. And like I said, this is right outside of the checkpoint. After everything that went wrong that day. The sled breaking, the trash can breaking, especially was the biggest thing. Taking so long to get up Rosebud, what it felt like. Losing the team in a race right outside a checkpoint after such a long run. I just came in a 101, just absolutely devastated. Erica could hear me screaming, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, ha, ha, ha," like probably a few other things along the way as well. And then same thing with the checkers, because they're watching the trackers, so they sent him out, and they're like, "Well, he's not here," because that whole ordeal took easily 45 minutes to an hour. So again, another hour plus of time that we just dropped on the trail for no reason. So, but got them all lined out again, just left Y in single lead, and just went the last, 100 yards, maybe, to the actual checkpoint, came in there, and then the person that's checking me in watches this. I apologize, because I was not in a good mood going in there. And like I alluded to earlier, these things happen on the trail regularly, and you just kind of deal with it. But like I said, your emotions go to here, and then as you progress on that run, they come back down to your baseline, and you're just running dogs again. But this was where they're right here, and it was 100 yards down the trail, so I'm just still kind of fuming and everything. And so I had to check my gear, so I just ripped the trash can off the ground, or threw it on the ground, and then ripped open my sled and showed her everything. And then I'm just fuming, don't know where we're going, grab everything, losing gear right there, it's whatever, and then go and settle into the checkpoint, and kind of starting to explain to Erica a little bit what happened, and she's trying to comfort me, and that was the lowest I was during the entire race, just because, again, how much we put into doing what we're doing, and how much training we put in just for this race, and just to have all that stuff kind of go wrong. And then I asked her how many people came in there in the last hour, and she said nobody. So nobody passed me during that, but I thought we were third or fourth, and we came in there seventh somehow. So that didn't make sense to me, because I was keeping track in my head. So anyway, I don't know. So I was just so down. And then you start doing your checkpoint routine, and I did it pretty slow, because I was just catching my breath and just start ripping off layers. And then you put it on the sled and instantly would just freeze, because I was just drenched in sweat. And then I remember one point during that, I don't know if it was at the start or after I got the cooker going or what, but I just looked at Erica, and it's why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? We're spending so much money, we're putting so much time in this is just miserable. Why are we doing this? And that's exactly how I felt in that situation. I was ready to scratch. I'll be honest with you guys. I was ready to scratch. But I learned last year, you never scratch when you come and do a checkpoint. That's just stupid. Because you're going to be there, even if you scratch, you're going to be there for hours taking care of the dogs and everything and loading them up. And I just didn't want to regret scratching. Like I said, I learned last year, you never scratch when you first come in. I'll sit there and bitch and moan and complain about everything, get it out of my system, go eat some food, go take a little nap, and then you just keep fucking going. I don't know. I've never had anything happen yet where it's actually made us actually scratch. So I don't know. But I was pretty close to doing that. And then shortly after that, kind of getting the dogs going, we declared our 6 hour there. So that was one of our 2 mandatory rest periods. And you could either choose to do it there or in Central for your 6 hour, then a mandatory 4 for everybody at our final checkpoint in Circle. Yep, and then that's when your first mandatory rest, your time differential is adjusted and accounted for as well. And so what that is, like I talked a little bit about how each musher had a 3-minute time differential between when they started and the next musher started. So there were 17 that signed up. I think 15 started. So that last place is starting 45 minutes after I started. So that's unfair, right? So how do we account for that? Well, it does in the checkpoints. So I had to wait 6 hours and 45 minutes before I could go. And last place, as soon as that 6-hour time period's up, they get to go. So that's how that time differential for the start is accounted for. But yeah, just finally going through and doing my checkpoint routine. And this is when they have one of the mandatory vet checks where they actually go through in depth, look at all your dogs intently, and see if there's any issues. And they found a little issue with Miss Y, who was sitting on the bed with us right here. I don't think you guys can see her in the video, but if you keep seeing me looking over there and talking to a dog, it's Miss Y. But anyway, she had some minor frostbite on her vulva, which is something we didn't want. And they were a little concerned about that. And so that was just added to the demoralization coming into that checkpoint, having her have an issue and not sure if she would be able to continue on or if she was able to continue on for how much longer. Because she's finished every single race that I've run. And every single trainer run that we've done this year with her, she's ran in lead. Every single run that she's been on, she's ran in lead. And every single run that we went on this year, I thought about going up Eagle Summit this year and how much better it was going to be than last year. So if I would have had to leave her in 101, that might have been an excuse to scratch. And I'll tell you guys right now, if I ever do scratch from a race, it's going to be because it fucking sucks out there. Like, this shit sucks sometimes. Like, this is that type 2 fun. I just found out what that means, and that describes this to a T. Which means it sucks while you're doing it, but it's really fun when you look back on it, and that's exactly what this is, just because of how rewarding it is. But I know there's a lot of people out there that when they scratch from races, they give not necessarily a bunch of excuses, but they talk about this, that, and the other, and the dogs, and yada, yada, yada. So if I ever scratch, I'm just going to say it sucked. I didn't want to do it anymore. Unless like I break a leg or have something that actually deserves to be scratched happen. Yeah, I don't know, just random tangent there. If that ever happens, I promise you guys, I won't give excuses for a while. I'll tell you guys straight up, because it is just so challenging out there mentally, physically, dealing with the cold and all these different weather conditions that we go through. And the more that the race progresses, just the more challenging it becomes for the musher. I mean, the dogs, we basically do an equal run to rest ratio. We're running for 6, 7, 8 hours, resting for 6, 7, 8 hours. Running for 6 hours, resting for 6 hours. Basically doing that perpetually until we get to the finish line. And that rest, I mean, they're resting that entire rest period, and that's all they need to continue on. But for the mushers, if we're resting for 4, 5, 6 hours, we're working for 4 or 5 of those. So taking care of the dogs, cooking for the dogs, bedding them down, taking their booties off, putting booties on, feeding them out, taking care of our gear, taking care of our equipment, taking care of ourselves. Before, like I said, we might nap for a half hour before you got to get up and do it all over again. So as the race progresses, you're getting more and more sleep deprived. You're getting less nutrition, less hydration in you. So it just kind of ratchets up the intensity and just kind of the physical wear and tear that you feel. I mean, you're getting sore into it, so I don't know. It's just challenging out there. So it's just extremely challenging is what I'm trying to portray to you guys. And then to have something unexpected happen, whether it's the trash can breaking, part of your sled breaking, tipping over multiple times, losing the team, having to recover the team, and then coming in the checkpoint and having our superstar leader have a potential issue where she's going to be dropped. Just all those minor things just explode, and it makes it feel like it's just such a big ordeal, and they just keep on adding on top of each other. And like I said earlier, though, you just got to improvise, adapt, and overcome, and just move forward. You got to have a short-term memory, and you just got to keep on going forward because, like I said, every single musher in these races, you're going to have issues like that happen, and you just got to forget about it, move forward, and forget that you ever had that trash can or, you know, that strap for your light or whatever thing that broke for you while you're out on the trail. So, and that's what we did. And talking about that vet book earlier in the race, so like I said, so that gets annotated, that Y. And this was when we first got in, so we had a 6 hour and 45 minute mandatory rest there, so I had time to cool off, settle down, like I said, eat some food, feed the dogs out. First off, they're priority, so dogs, gear, body is my priority out there. So you take care of the dogs, they'll take care of you, take care of the gear, they'll take care of you, and you got to take care of yourself to take care of yourself. So that's the order in the checkpoint or anytime we're resting, that I take care of stuff too. So the dogs are their one priority, so get out there, take their booties off, inspect them, bed them down, feed them, massage them, manipulate them, make sure everything's good with all their joints. Yeah. So that's what we're doing when we get into these checkpoints. But anyway, so the vets went through. She was the only one really with any issues. And then, like, so we had that 6 hours, basically 7 hour rest. So we knew that she would be able to get looked at again towards the end of that. So I was able to, like I said, cool down, get some food. They actually had a Arctic oven there, which for those of you who don't know what those are, again, that's something you can Google pretty quickly to try to reduce the time on this a little bit because I've been going in pretty depth, but which was a warm place for us to sleep, basically. So I took my gear in there, what I was wearing, to attempt to get it to dry. Like I said, I was soaked from sweating from going up Rosebud, chasing after the team, turning them around multiple times. I was just drenched in sweat and everything was frozen. And like I said, once I got in and took everything off, it just completely froze. So I took that stuff in. They had a small wood stove in there, which was great for us to like actually stay warm, but it wasn't really adequate to actually dry gear. Got to the point where it just got all like the ice and snow kind of off of it, but it was still wet. And that's just one of those things you kind of deal with during these races. You're going to be wet, you're going to be cold, you're going to be hungry, you're going to be angry during the course of it. But was able to get a little bit of a nap. I think I slept there about 2 hours, which was pretty much the only checkpoint I actually slept in during the entire race. And like I said, just recharged everything somewhat to a point where I was ready to continue going. And then went back out to the team, had the vets look at Miss Y again, and we got some ointment on her, and that helps a lot for those kind of issues, for a lot of issues for the dogs, honestly. And was able to get some better protection to cover her area, her bits, if you will, from the conditions that we were dealing with. And then got mentally prepared to take on Eagle Summit. I touched on it briefly how it was last year. It was the most challenging part of the race by far last year. And honestly, I mean, you forget so much. Like, it's interesting. This is the first race recap that we've actually done in depth, and it's interesting to see how much I'm just actually recalling, because you just data dump so much of this stuff because of how miserable a lot of it is. And And as soon as you cross that finish line, you forget how miserable it was, and it's just super, super rewarding, super awesome that you finished it. But yeah, so last year Eagle Summit was a huge challenge. Like I said, every training run that we went on, I thought about these guys getting up Eagle Summit and how I would adapt differently if we had similar situation that occurred last year. And that paid dividends even going up Rosebud, like I alluded to earlier. So I felt like we were really mentally and physically prepared for Eagle coming into the race. Coming into 101, brought us down a little bit. What we were once you're on those runners, like all that's gone. Like you're going forward. So got the dogs ready after our mandatory was up, and then we kicked ass and kept going.